You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast, Beast Over Burden. I'm your host, one of them, Niki Sims, exclusive coach over at Barbell Logic and the Chief Experience Officer, joined by my fellow beast, Andrew Jackson, also a coach here.
Hello.
And COO, as you know from a couple weeks ago, the cool officer. Sorry, he's actually quite a professional. We're joined by one of my favorite people. Her name is Monica Multani. I hope I said your last name correctly, but Monica is a client of mine, and I'm really excited to have her on the show today to share some really cool history in her story. Monica, thanks for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here. It's pretty awesome.
So tell us just like a couple little things about yourself, and then I'm just going to spend the next 30 minutes digging into your life.
Perfect. Yeah, I live in Miami, and I'm a physician. I specialize in gastroenterology, so I do endoscopies and colonoscopies, and then anything nutrition related when it comes to digestion. So stomach, liver, intestines, pancreas. That's my day job. And then in my free time, I just like to be on the beach and then lift as well. That's been like a good quarter of my life.
Yeah. And that's how you and I came to know each other, is from training.
Yes. Yeah. I tried to find the strongest person, the strongest woman I knew. So I was like, looked on Instagram. I was like, who's the strongest woman I know? And that's how I found you.
I can't believe I made the cut. That is a huge compliment.
For sure.
How did you get started with lifting?
So like for me, the beginning of my strength training was always with men primarily. And so I was like, maybe I should find somebody that I want to look like, or I want to be, or I want in terms of my strength training. And someone was the perfect fit for my brother. And so I was like, who would be, that for me? And so that started my journey on Instagram, because it's like the clearest visual form, being able to find someone and also like hearing them talk. So that's how I found Niki, was actually online. And then Salman also recommended, he said it would just be the perfect example to look for.
Salman's a coach down in Miami. He coaches in person. You had done some in-person training with him, right? Is that how you kind of dipped your toe in?
Yeah. I got into lifting June of like 2020. I was inconsistent until December, until like 6 months later. And I guess I could tell you guys how I got into lifting at that point.
Yeah, that'd be great. What was it that initially motivated you to want to be stronger?
My mom, which is a whole other story, got into lifting because of my brother. June was about the time that she started with Salman, so I started taking her there. And then I didn't get into it until I injured my hand. So my job, the reason why I mentioned endoscopies and colonoscopies, is it's very taxing on the hands and wrists, and an injury is very common in our field. So that happened during my training. I got a pain here, which was diagnosed as a decurvian tendinosynovitis. And I started seeing a hand surgeon, got MRIs. I did long courses of steroids. I did a few courses of NSAIDs. So like Mobic, ibuprofen, Tylenol. And I even got an injection in the wrist and a steroid, and like nothing helped. And so that was like maybe like October, November, everything came out negative. So the MRI was able to diagnose those things, but I talked to the hand surgeon and he's like, you have like kind of like 5 or 10 years left on that hand. So just like plan accordingly in your career.
That's a huge blow. Oh man.
Yeah, it's all a blur how he said it, but I just remember those words. So maybe he said it differently, but for me, that was like the last thing I remembered. And I was just devastated. So I turned to Eastern medicine. So there was a couple of things that I did there, a couple of healing techniques that cut the pain. But in order for me to like continue doing my job, I needed to figure out a way where it like wouldn't happen again, basically. So December in 2020, I talked to mom, and that's when she hit her 200-pound deadlift.
Wow.
Like that was her goal, was her PR, her 1 rep max. So she hit that. And I started talking to Salman more seriously. And he was like, look, I can train you in chains, but I think that if you strengthen the full arm, you'll get the results and benefits that you need in the hand. And then we started very slowly with all the same movements, deadlifts, squats, overhead press, and bench, very slowly moving our way up on the bar and just adding a little bit at a time. And yeah, that's how I got into it.
I'm curious, was it seeing your mom lift 200 pounds that clicked for you, that being stronger would be helpful? Or was it seeing how was her life changing outside of the gym besides lifting 200 pounds? Was that noticeable as well?
Yeah, she's like a 5'2" Indian woman, like no more than 150 pounds. And so seeing her do that, that was the other thing he said. He's like, all I do is arthritis, right? Like he's like, all I train and all barbell lifting and strength training is like supportive of people above 65. So if you have arthritis, I mean, I'm sure I can train around it, right? So seeing her do that, I think was such a blow to like my ego as well. I was like, my mom just like she can't be stronger than me. Like there's just like no world where that's okay. So for me, it was like a whole other motivator. And then she got off of all of her medication. She used to be on a thyroid medicine, and I think she was on blood pressure medicine. She came off of those. She was far more active. She was always afraid of the water. She wanted to get into the ocean.
Wow.
Just like seeing her flourish was huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing the contrast between hearing from a medical professional,
Yeah.
sorry, all you've got is 5 to 10 years, just start preparing for that, versus here's a path to adding more ability into your life and more quality of life at 65.
Yes.
Just kind of an interesting contrast. And I've had several clients have had this experience where
Oh, really?
they get an MRI or they get some sort of a diagnosis. And once the diagnosis is said out loud, it's like the recommendation cascades into this series of constraints, time to start giving up hiking, or just this is the way it's going to be for the rest of your life. And there's nothing to do except to maybe take some medication that treats symptoms and get used to this new life that you have coming, versus what you're seeing in your own mom. And,
yes.
And I'm assuming that's been your experience now since you've been training.
Yes. I mean, so, he wasn't wrong in the sense that if I were doing between 13 to 15 procedures a day, many do more. I mean, it's only a certain amount of time before those joints really take a wear and tear. And I see it in GI physicians. It's a very common phenomenon. Maybe not 5 to 10 years. Maybe he was being conservative. I want to give him more credit than that. I think that he was giving his, from what he knows and from what we see.
Right.
So fortunately, seeing my mom just get stronger and more able was you're right. It was such a contrast.
That's interesting.
And you really thought about, what is past this joint? What's beyond this joint that might need to be strengthened? You're like, yes, I have to do these interesting movements that involve my wrists and fingers, but how about my biceps and my shoulders that can support this? How about my back? How about the rest of my body beyond that joint?
Yeah. And I looked a lot into improving my ergonomics with scoping. That's also a big thing in our field, but it only takes you so far. So the ergonomics will make you focus on some of your bigger joints. So you do have to have stronger triceps, stronger biceps, because you can manipulate the scope without having to use your smaller joints. And so that took me farther, but it didn't take me all the way, because for me, it was really about resilience. So I knew I was going to get injured again. I know I'm prone to injury with my hands. It was more how fast can I recover? And so I noticed that as I've been repetitively scoping, instead of it taking me a week for some pains to go away, it takes a day.
Oh, wow.
So for me, it was more the resilience factor was what I needed. And there must be something in my personal opinion, there might be something lacking in the evidence of ergonomics because women are more prone to injury in our field. I used to believe that it was the way that the scope is manufactured, it's for male hands. But I wonder now if it's because we have less muscle mass, less bone density as females. So maybe I can do something on my part. So it's not that my field is going to get any better or that I'm so much stronger. And it's more that I'm more resilient and perhaps I can prevent injury if it happens.
And you're still doing the same number of procedures?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I'm doing more.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, I still get those aches and pains, but it's just like I'm so much faster in recovery.
And that was a neat thing that you wanted to work on with work. Like, I think you're really goal driven. I see that in a lot of ways. And with work, you're like, my goal now is to be really efficient. And part of that was that you could go out and go train after a long day of working.
Yes. True.
But it's neat that you were taking that into account. So I can see how important that resiliency factor is to you.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely, I mean, made a huge difference in my life.
Have you had to modify training to accommodate that work schedule? Or if there is a flare up of symptoms, like what do you guys do to manage around that?
Oh, yeah, good question. I mean, Nick, can you think of anything off the bat that we've been doing differently around my schedule?
Well, your schedule is pretty neat because you work for a week or 2 weeks at a time, sometimes longer, maybe sometimes shorter. And then you get with your travel arrangement, traveling to work at different locations and then being back home. So you have like periods of real high intensity work where we're not sure if you're going to get to the gym or not. And then when you can go to the gym, you do what you can. And then you have time off to recover. And I think that's kind of to our favor so that you're not getting just dosed with like a lot of, I guess we'll call it high intensity risk stress that would kind of lead to pain and exacerbation.
Yeah.
So it's like high intensity on for a week or two and then like recovery for time off. And I think that is useful because we get a little bit of a useful deload in lifting and then we reload right when you're back.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the nature of your work schedule that I think is probably useful.
It's like travel nursing, same thing as a physician. I can travel. And so the 2 weeks on are intense. And I think what works for us is having like a goal baseline. Like if I can just squat 135, 3 sets of 5 when I get back, let's just keep that the baseline, you know? And I think that's something that was really helpful for me instead of always feeling like we got to add pounds onto the bar, just having that baseline get stronger over time. So when I have these off weeks, off days, I just know I can settle back into that and then keep increasing the baseline.
Yeah, I appreciate your mindset because I think a lot of people who get into strength training are just like always more. And if there's an injury or a tweak or a schedule offset, it feels like we're failures. And it's kind of like, oh, what's the point?
Yes.
Like your ability to go from like, nope, it's okay, I'm going to keep going and I want to improve my resiliency and just kind of have that baseline to keep building on, I think is a huge leap that a lot of people, myself included, I think take years to get to. Like, how did you realize that so quickly?
Oh, you know, the only thing I've really been very consistent with is lifting. I've tried all sorts of different lifestyle, you know, cardio, caloric deficit, intermittent fasting. And I just, besides a few months, I just didn't have much consistency with them. Lifting was the only thing that I was like, oh, I find myself going back. Not like necessarily because I like enjoy it every time. You guys probably have the same experience. It's more that it's nice. It's incentive driven for me. Like I see the numbers go up on the bar or I feel good putting just 45s on either side and squatting it. Like, oh, I feel strong. I think that was just a consistent incentive for me that's lasted over 3 years now. I mean, nothing's ever lasted that long for me.
So you live in Miami, which is the land of butt implants and just like lots of vanity.
Yes.
And I think living in Miami, I had to get a little taste of it in SoCal, but I think Miami is just like turned up in terms of like taking whatever roundabout way you can get your Riz removed, you can get silicone and Botox everywhere. And, you know, you've had a lot of conversations with your girlfriends that are just like, get skinnier, get skinnier, get skinnier.
Yes.
And you've always just like you knew what you wanted to do, which was cool. What's that been like for you?
Oh, I mean, like, I could talk about this for days. There's just this whole mindset shift that I think took me like a full 6 months to a year to get into, you know? So, like, the mental model that I had before, and I would say that's common for a lot of women, common for my friends, is less, right? Like, how do I get less? How do I have less calories? How do I ingest less calories? How do I go like catabolic, you know? And so, there's a lot of cardio and then there's a lot of calorie deficit. And so the irony is when I injured my hand, that was the least amount that I'd weighed. I weighed 133 pounds. And that's when I injured my hand. So the model broke for me. Like it just wasn't working.
Wow.
Right. So I had to start thinking differently for my career. It was harder for like the other model to catch up. You know, I was eating more protein in one day than some of my friends were eating in like a week. So like it was so hard to find a community to talk to about it because they were just like, you're crazy. I mean, it looked crazy, right? And so I was like, yeah, just give me like 6 to 8 months and I'm gonna like explode. I'm gonna be huge, and then it's gonna be fine. And they were like, in no world was that something that was okay. I think the strength model made sense to most of my friends. Like, yeah, you want to get stronger, but like not at the sacrifice of aesthetics. Was like, you know, was where we would defer. And so if I hadn't injured my hand, and more importantly, if my mom hadn't continued lifting, I would have never continued because there's no messages from my mom being like, oh, you're gaining a little weight. Like, oh, it's not starting to look good. For her, she was like, as long as you're getting stronger, that's what matters right now. So those first 6 to 8 months, when you're putting on calories and you're putting on pounds, it's hard unless you have some sort of like female model being like, hey, it's okay, just keep going. Like things will start to look differently once you're out of LP. And then, yeah, once I was 133 pounds and now I'm like 163 pounds. So I've gained somewhere between 30 pounds.
Wow.
And for me, it sort of turned into like, how much space can I occupy in this world? Like, how much more Monica can I put in the world? Right?
Aw,
like,
I love that.
you know, the world deserves more Monica. Like,
I agree.
Further, you know,
because it's true. Like women really want there to be less and less and less, and they just want to be smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's like such a hard life to lead. And you're driven by what people decide is, you know, too much, or
yeah,
you're driven by what people think of you. And you touched on this a couple weeks ago, Andrew. So yeah, more of you like physically also means more of your intellectual contributions, more of your love and caring. And so I love that you went that direction with it.
Yeah, it was good.
How does 165, you said?
Yeah.
How does that feel now that you're at that point compared to what you imagined it would be? Or did you even imagine that you ever be 30 pounds heavier?
No.
How does it feel now that you're kind of settled into that? Does it feel like you're big and, you know, what you imagined 165 would have been or is?
No,
Yeah.
I feel sturdy. I don't know if that is the right, if that's like the accurate. I feel like if the wind came by, I wouldn't just fall over. Like that's how I
yeah.
feel. So that's like a different concept, I think, of strength that I didn't see. And I used to joke with people at the gym or friends or girls or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I just don't want to get bulky. And I was like, if you know how to get bulky, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I've been trying. I've been trying to get bulky and I just can't, you know. I would say that my body shape has stayed somewhere in the same. And so what Niki and I have been doing is just measuring my waistline. So over the last year or year and a half, my waistline has stayed between like 32 to 34 inches, but I've gained mass. Like I've gained pounds. So where is it going? Right. So that's when my friend came down. I was telling Niki, like, she was like, oh my gosh, your waist is so snatched.
Snatched.
That was the first time I learned this term.
Okay. I've never heard of this term before. Yeah, I'm learning something right now.
It's crazy. Yeah, no, it was very, you just look like your waist has cinched down and like my back and shoulders have widened and my hips and my butt has gotten so much bigger. And fortunately in Miami, like that's the thing, you know, that's the
currency.
That's the currency. Exactly. And so Salman told me this at the very beginning. I was like, well, how do I get a six pack? And he was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that for you.
I love it, Salman. That's so good.
He is just like, he's so raw, he's like, that's not my goal for you. But if you ever want that, that's going to get easier in the future for you to achieve. And it's not that I'll get you at a six pack. It's that I'll always keep you 6 weeks away from a six pack. So if you need to cinch down or whatever, we can do small changes and then you'll get that look. But otherwise, you're just going to be healthy. So I think I feel good in my body and I feel stronger, but it's more like my activities in my life are easier. And it's also, I feel healthier. So like my hair is growing, my nails grow.
Wow.
Right. It's like I was on a bike with my friend and I didn't realize that the tire was flat. Like it didn't occur to me that it was. I was just biking, and so when we switched bikes, she was like, oh my gosh, something's wrong,
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
So it's more like my everyday life is so much easier. That provided value in me that I didn't foresee. But I don't want to promise people you'll get a six pack because that's not what happened either, right? It's just more that like the shape of my body has changed. And before meeting my fiance, my dating life had totally changed too. And I think I had told Niki that.
Yeah, that's another one of my favorite conversations is you were like, I need to find a guy who lifts, and who appreciates lifting. And I had struggled with that too. Because when it's that important to you, someone who lifts, that they are dedicated, that they are consistent, that they value certain things. And so when they don't train, it's really hard to kind of share a set of core values with each other. And then you finally found someone who lifts.
Yes. I was going on dates with guys and like some of them would not tell me how much they weighed. Like they were like, we just don't want to go there because I'd be like, oh, I just squatted like 150 pounds, and they'd be like, that's great. And then they would later on, I'd be like, well, we'd be talking about how much we weigh and now it doesn't, the number doesn't matter. So I would say it and I'd be like, how about you? And they're like, we don't really feel. 2 guys before my fiance, they did not want to tell me how much they weighed.
Wow.
Because they didn't want to be like, well, you could squat me, And I think it wasn't so much that I was changing who I was seeking out in the world. It's that I got different attention. Like these guys, I don't think they wanted to date me. Also, I must have looked crazy, right? Like I'm, again, eating just a ton of protein and I'm trying to lift as heavy as I can. It was just totally different mindsets,
It is.
Can guys be snatched? Is this
their waist?
Oh, no.
Okay. No.
That's
this
an
is
honor only for women.
Okay.
Yeah. I think snatched. What's the definition of snatched?
So you'd never say, I'm looking for a guy that's snatched? Or how does one fit that? Okay. It's just you look snatched. Yeah, I feel like such a grandpa right now.
I think snatched means that Coca-Cola shape. That hourglass
gotcha.
shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
just in the middle where you tie it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't want that, babe. Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah. No. I don't know what the equivalent terminology for men is. I'll have to look it up.
Beefy.
That's really funny.
Beefcakey.
Sturdy?
Sturdy guy.
I totally relate to that sturdy feeling.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking back to times when I was going through a deficit and whether I knew it or not. And sometimes I didn't know that I was feeling less than sturdy until I got to a period like where I'm now, where it's just like, oh man, I feel good moving weights around and weights that used to be like, oh, weights. I'm like, I got this now. Like, just give me more. I got this. I feel really capable.
Yes.
You mentioned that like the difference between when you're eating enough protein and not enough protein is being under the bar. You don't have to think about 100 cues for survival. You're just like, okay, I got this.
Yes. Yeah. Feeling like the bar will move. Sometimes when it feels like I'm not eating enough, it doesn't feel like the bar is going to move. And so there's just so much more energy into thinking about making the bar move. Whereas like, oh, the bar will move. I can focus on these other movements, like other cues that I need to focus on.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Has training and that sort of shift in perspective fed back into how you view your professional career or the medical industry that you're a part of?
Yeah, it's given me a lot of pause for thought. My mom was actually a geriatrician. So she specialized in older individuals. And looking back, both her and I have had reservations on some of the medical advice that we had given at the time, because like her whole life changed. And so before, it was the natural progression was you would get older, naturally get weaker, and have to go into a living facility. And that's how you kind of spent the last of your days. And so she specialized in hospice, end of life hospice care. And so that was always the model that we had. And over the last couple of years, it's really switched. And for myself, there's a condition called irritable bowel syndrome. It's very common. Constipation is a really common one especially for like younger females. So irritable bowel syndrome with constipation. And, I wonder, there's no evidence to back this up, but I wonder if it's because we're just not consuming enough calories. And also protein is a bulker, right? So in some ways it feels like a stool bulker. So what if we're just not producing enough stool because we're not eating enough as females?
Wow.
I've wondered that. There's no really way to adequately do that study. So if what we're doing is eating what we call FODMAPs, so these types of sugars, that's very common in like salads and fruits. So if we're just eating carbs and FODMAPs, like, of course, we're going to have intestinal issues, but you can't consume that amount of protein and not use it, right? So it's not like you can eat 100 grams of protein a day and not lift. Like, there has to be what I would like to consider like anabolic nature to it, right? So it should be like protein feeding into a body that is using that protein to help with immune system, digestion, endocrine system, fertility, like all of these other things. Like, what if we just brought women into a more anabolic state? Would they be experiencing some of the issues that they have now? It's something that has changed really the way that I've looked at things, but there isn't enough scientific evidence to back that up. So I just want to make that disclaimer.
I think we have a new slogan that we need to make women anabolic again.
Yes.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah, right? Hair growth, nail growth, like those things significantly change. What is that? That's anabolic, right?
Yeah. I love it.
I wonder that a lot now. Or like I used to get sick twice a year without fail, like July, December. And so it's correlation is not causation, right? I don't know if it's like strictly from the lifting, but I do wonder if there's like an anabolic component to that immune system, all sorts of things. So both Mom and I have talked about this at length. How much would our industry change if our patients were lifting? I would say a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it gives people such a stronger sense of control over their outcomes too, where they're able to take someone telling them, actually, your life is over now because of this diagnosis, or when the doctor tells you something where they're just looking at one little part of your body and telling you to never use that part of your body again. You're like, well, I'm actually going to consider my whole body and my whole person and take that information and just like put that in a small drawer where it deserves to be without just like dooming yourself to the hospice.
Yes, that's something that it gives me a lot of pause for thought. But, as medical physicians, we're doing the best with what we have, the evidence that we have. And I think we just need more evidence-backed data on lifting. It's just hard to get people to lift if it's not something that's
so challenging.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that you guys see a lot of.
Yeah, it's a big identity shift, and then getting them to lift and then getting the studies behind it. But I think the sample size ones, as many as you can get them, is still useful.
I have an important question. Are you deadlifting more than your mom now?
You have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then she was like, when can I reach my next PR? And we were like, at this point, do you need to? Like, doing the 200
Right.
is great enough, right? So we joke about how she's like ready for her next PR. And we're like, whoa, wait, like, it's a lot I've thought about. But yeah, that's a good question. And yes, yeah, it's happened.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. It's been really interesting to hear your experience, and hopefully some people out there will be inspired by that mental model change that you went through. And, you're probably going to be, for some people out there, the person that they look to and want to be like or to train like. And so it's it's pretty cool to hear. And I support the mission of making women anabolic. I think that's awesome. So thanks for sharing that idea.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you guys so much for having me. It's definitely a privilege and an honor. So I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for being here. I love getting to work with you and hearing your perspective on things.
Oh, good luck with your training and hopefully lasting much longer than 5 to 10 years.
Oh, yes. Yes. So far, so good. Can't complain. Yeah. Thanks to you guys. You guys take care now.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week at Barbell Logic Beast Over Burden.